Hello everyone, it's a Monday in Paris, and we all know what that means, another episode of the Eiffel Tower. This episode presented by French Today, audiobooks teaching modern French and French in general. That's how I learned French, more about them at the end of the episode. But today, we've got Beckett from History Chicks, one of the most popular podcasts in the world, and she's come in the studio here in Paris, and we talked a little bit about history of Paris. So imagine this. We got in contact. She's visiting Paris for the first time. And she told me, you're going to hear about it. She told me that she was going to take a potato to the Pere Lachaise cemetery. And that got me thinking, what are the other things that history nerds or history buffs do when they come to a city like Paris? And lo and behold, she shared 8 things that she's either done since she's been here or plans to do during her time here. So here comes Beckett Graham from the History Chicks, followed at the end by a little bit of news about how I'm advancing with my French language lessons, and also a little bit of reader mail. Let's get on with it. Beckett Graham.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Very good, thank you.
You don't like the way I pronounce your name?
I love it.
Yeah?
It's the proper way, I'm sure.
And tell me how you'd say it.
Graham.
Graham.
You can't do it.
No, I can't do it. Is that a typical Kansas City accent that you've got?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I knew it because you just told me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I.e., people think there that they haven't got one.
Right. Same with everywhere.
Yeah.
No one thinks they have an accent. I had a New Zealand guy on the show who'd been in Paris for 18 years. And Paul from Peloton, if he's listening, probably not. And he said he doesn't think he has an accent. Everyone wrote in and said, that guy's got a very strong New Zealand. Yeah, we don't know. But we're not here to talk about accents.
Correct.
We're here to talk a bit. Basically, as I said in the intro, you run the History Chicks podcast. You're a self-confessed history nerd.
I am.
Can we say nerd, or is that?
Absolutely. I'll embrace it. I'll
Yeah.
wave the flag.
Right? What would the flag look like?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. A lot of late nights and no sleep, mostly. I don't know what the flag would look like.
Like a book. I feel like it would look like a book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or a podcast, like your own podcast.
Or a bill for a lot of library fines.
Is that true?
Oh my gosh. I'm bumping the ceiling at all times.
Really?
Yeah.
How many books are you constantly got on the go?
I would say right now I have 35 checked out.
You have 35 books checked out of the library. Wow.
I'm keeping the industry alive.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I don't even know if I've ever rented 35 or borrowed 35 books from a library in the past year.
The smell of a library book is my favorite smell.
Did you go to any in Paris?
I have not.
No. I don't think I've been to any either, but it's high on my list of things to do. Maybe even a story about libraries of Paris, because they're meant to be some really good ones.
I have one more day.
You do, and that's what we're going to talk about. So when we sort of started talking and you said you were in Paris, I thought, and the seed of this episode was planted, is you said you have a few things to do first, one of which was putting a potato on the grave of Parmentier. And I thought, what? I said, we need to delve into this, right? And then the idea is that you're a history nerd in Paris for the first time. And I was like, what does a history nerd do in Paris? And you said, Oliver, I got a whole list of things.
I do.
And we're going to go through that list, but let's start with that potato and tell me, did you end up doing it?
I did.
Okay, so walk me through. I'm fascinated.
I'll give you the picture. So it all started way back when I read a book called Julie and Julia, which has since been made into a movie. The very first recipe Julie made of Julia Child's cookbook was potage Parmentier.
Yes.
And so I thought, what on earth? Because that's all I need to fall down a rabbit hole. We call those rabbit holes, like in Alice in Wonderland.
Yep.
You fall, you keep falling. So I started to look into his story and was so intrigued by him and the love people still have for him.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what better homage than a potato? And I got there, and there's potato plants planted all over.
So we have to wind back. The story is that he introduced potatoes to Paris and France.
Yes,
Yeah.
he thought how sad to just neglect this nutritious food that is easy to produce. The poor don't have to starve. I would say he saved and revolutionized that part of cuisine
Right.
in France. He helped a lot of people. So to that effect, he is very beloved. He is very beloved.
Yeah.
Of all of the graves there, His is one of the most maintained.
Well,
Someone has planted and mulched a garden that is blooming right now.
And this is in Pere Lachaise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereabouts is it? Do you remember?
It is in section 39.
Whereabouts is it? Is it like close to the entryways, or did you have to go?
Oh no, I had to walk.
Yeah.
It took 4 hours to get there because we
Really?
were too obsessed with everything else.
Oh my god, man, that must be like they say it's like an open air museum.
It
Pere
is.
Lachaise Cemetery.
It really is.
Yeah.
Wear combat boots.
So tell me. So you just went to a regular shop and bought a potato, or like on the Lovelock bridges, or what used to be the Lovelock bridges. There's people trying to make a buck by selling a lock on the edge. Are there people selling potatoes?
There's not people selling potatoes.
Business idea, Beckett.
I know. Once they've heard this show. No, I bought it from a grumpy man in a grocery store who could not comprehend why I was buying one.
Did you try
potato.
and tell him why you were doing it? Oh no, you're just buying one potato.
No,
Yeah.
I just looked at him like, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was the best.
And then when you get to the grave, you just popped it on?
Yes, I'll give you the photo.
Oh, I'd love to see it. So that photo, as well as every single tip that Beckett gives us, will be on the EiffelTower.com. So people have also planted in Parmentier's honor.
There's potato plants.
You know what you might like? There's a metro station called Parmentier. I used to live right by it, right on the street, Avenue Parmentier.
Mm-hmm.
And in the metro, there's a statue of him and a brief explanation of the Potato Man.
Do people leave potatoes there?
I don't think so. I'm surprised that I even did an episode on Pere Lachaise and I didn't know about the potatoes. But hey, look, there's so much about Paris that even the Paris podcasters don't know.
I encountered another grave by accident at Pere Lachaise, having had to divert because there was actually a funeral.
There was a funeral at Pere Lachaise?
Mm-hmm.
Really? I didn't know. What was there, like mourners and stuff? The whole
Mm-hmm.
thing? Wow.
I didn't realize that so recent of people
No.
were still being interred.
I knew because I once saw a grave for someone who died in the terror attacks in Paris a few years ago, and that struck me because most of the graves are very old.
Mm-hmm.
But that's surprising. I wonder who is. I mean, they must have the right kind of
Well,
personality to be buried today.
And it could have been in a family plot.
Good point.
So I don't know. I didn't get close enough. I didn't see, but
You were just standing there with a potato in your hand.
yeah, trying not to explain myself. So I turned the corner, and there was a grave of two balloonists who had died of oxygen deprivation in the air
Wow.
and fallen to basically their deaths.
Ay.
And we had covered a podcast. We had covered a balloonist named Sophie Blanchard, who is Parisian.
Yes.
And also died in a ballooning accident. And so that was very intriguing to me to read about their story.
That's cool. It's a world of wonders there. And we'll talk about Sophie a little bit later when we talk through all the French women you've done. But if people are listening and they're thinking, what's the history chicks? What's all that about?
Long, long ago, I worked by myself and listened to podcasts 7 or 8 hours a day,
Wow.
believe it or not. And I wanted to find a women's history podcast on a certain topic that I was interested in. And there was nothing. If I could insert a cricket sound here, I would make a cricket sound. There was just nothing, and I couldn't believe it. And so I felt this cold wash of dread, honestly, wash over me, knowing, oh no, I guess I have to do it myself. And at the time, no one knew how to do it. No one knew how to do a podcast. I had to make it out of scraps, and somebody that works at NASA taught me how to code my RSS feed.
Is that true?
Yes, that is very true.
That's great.
So it's basically held together with chicken wire and gum. And we started with Marie Antoinette, and from that, the rest is history.
Never look back. How many episodes have you done now?
Well, we have 117 what we call full episodes, meaning they often stretch to upwards of 3 hours, and then we have a significant amount of mini casts under half an hour.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice for the people in a rush.
Yes.
Yeah, like this podcast, always about half an hour. But there you go. The History Chicks is something to listen to after you've listened to this episode.
Correct.
But we'll get back to that. Let's whip through a bit more of your list. Things to see. So this idea of a history buff coming to Paris. Did you line up and see the Eiffel Tower?
I did not see the Eiffel
Didn't
Tower.
care for the Eiffel Tower. Imagine that, guys.
But I did see something within the environs of the Eiffel Tower.
Go on, tell me more.
That made me very tearful. I encountered not only a replica of the torch, the original torch, how it looked, of the Statue of Liberty, but that is on top of the bridge where Princess Diana met her end, and there is a tribute there. And still, fresh flowers have been laid there at the foot of that statue. And that was a delightful surprise. I actually had wanted to see it, but had no idea that I was there until I saw it.
You stumbled upon the memorial. Mm-hmm. What did you think of that memorial? Because it's a bit divisive in that it's not. I think it's an unofficial memorial.
I think that I always like when people express their love for someone, and I don't think it matters if it's official or not. Yeah. It's just from people's heart. They feel the need to just say something to the universe. And so I love it. I loved everything about it. And that's how I felt about Parmentier, too. The potato is not official. I'm sure it's gone by now.
Yeah. So the idea with the Princess Diana memorial is that it's literally in the same place as the flame, which is, as I understand, a replica, to scale replica of the Statue of Liberty's flame, and it's directly under that where Princess Diana died. But were you seeking the flame, not the memorial?
Right.
Right. And so, what did you think of the flame?
She is my favorite. She's a French woman who
We're talking about Liberty, not Diana now, right?
Correct. So the Statue of Liberty is a French woman, my favorite French woman who lives in America still.
Right.
And is a very important symbol. Speaking of things being close to people's hearts, that statue was a gift from the heart of one people to the heart of another people.
True.
So great.
So why do you like the Statue of Liberty so much?
I just love the spirit behind it. I love how she has become the symbol of immigration, of welcome. She didn't start out that way. She was a gift, as I said, from one country, the people of one country to another. But I think she has become a symbol of what America stood for.
Stood for, not stands for.
Well, we want it to stand for
right.
that.
The future conditional tense?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Wow, good for you.
I'm learning French, so I'm thinking all intensive at the moment. But that's point 2 and 3 on your list. You have the Princess Diana Memorial and the Statue of Liberty. You also mentioned that you saw in passing the biggest replica.
Yes,
in
I
Paris.
did. I can't say the word for swan, so you'll have to
No one
do
can. I think it's Cygnes.
Okay.
It could be Cygnette. I don't know.
So the Isle of Swans
that's better.
is where she is. I love the story of that creation. When the Statue of Liberty was built, they of course had to tack it together and make sure everything fit before they sent this gift over to their friends in America. So here it comes, emerging over the skyline of Paris. And it was so delightful. People used to take their lunches and just look at her.
Yeah.
She became a beloved part of the skyline, but inevitably the time came when the Americans were finally ready with their pedestal, and she had to go to her new home.
Right.
And it was devastating, and people were very sad to see her go. And so, to express their love for their friends, their French friends, the American expats of Paris cobbled together their money and made the people of Paris this replica.
Did they cobble together the money and melt it down and make it out of?
They did not.
No, that would be even better.
That would be.
But then they built the replica that stands on the bridge just a stone's throw from the Eiffel Tower. I got the address here, but all these addresses, I'll stress it again, will be on the EiffelTower.com. But it's on just off the Grenelle Bridge, or the Pont de Grenelle, and it's 11.5 meters tall, or 37 feet and 9 inches for any American listeners, and for you as well. But what I was going to ask is, when they were building the Statue of Liberty in Paris, they didn't put it all together in one go, surely?
Oh, no. There was a very extensive process. They had to make molds, they had to hammer copper, and they actually exhibited, because they had run out of money,
Right.
the torch and the hand were exhibited for a long time, and people could pay to go up in them.
That's such a great idea, to exhibit a part of your project before it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And they built her head first. Logic would say you would build the feet and move your way up.
Yeah.
But they knew nobody's going to come pay money to look at feet.
You don't pay to look at feet.
Somehow.
Some foot fetishists probably would.
That's a limited pool of subscribers.
True, yeah.
So they did build those two pieces first, and they went assorted places.
Yeah.
And people could actually pay to have dinner inside of her head behind her eyes.
Oh, I love that. I think I've seen a picture of, and maybe you have it on your site or something, but I can track it down, of the Statue of Liberty's head in Paris. Like, it looked like it was just in a garden or something like that. Like they just sort of built it and go, that's done. Just pop that in the back garden. That's what we do in Australia. I don't know if that's what they do in Paris. And it was just sitting there, and it looks so big because when there's trees or buildings around it, it's not the view you typically see of it.
It's very interesting to see pieces of it disassembled in a different location. Gustave Eiffel built her skeleton. So there's another French connection.
Busy man, that guy. He built a fair few bridges as well.
He did. That's what he was known for.
Ah, okay. I know he built a famous bridge in the south of France somewhere that was in a film that was because it was really beautiful, sort of curving bridge. But anyway, he's not a interesting history person for this episode.
Okay.
But also, I wanted to do an episode or a blog post anyway about all the Statue of Liberties in Paris. So there's some homework for you as well, Beckett.
Excellent.
There's one in the Luxembourg Gardens, and there's a couple at the Arts and Métiers Museum. There's one outside and one inside, so you can get two for the price of one. But anyway, back onto the things that you find if you're a history nerd / history buff. You went to Versailles.
I did.
But not like a typical tourist.
No, I was more interested in getting to the Hameau, and it was awful cold, so my commitment level was very high.
So what's a Hameau for those of us who don't know?
So the Hameau is a series of cottages, in fact, a little village that Marie Antoinette had made on the estate of the Petit Trianon. And she would go there with her upper-class friends and play at being farmers or peasants, which you know how that ended up. But they...
Not well.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think anybody's rebuilt the dairy because Sèvres had made her milk buckets.
Wow.
And so that's a little bit of a slap in the face, isn't it? Oh, dear. But people lived there, and there was a woman employed to bake bread so that it would always smell like that if the queen and her friends decided to stop by.
Someone was employed to make bread just for the smell.
Oh, yes, and people
Wow.
would wash the pigs, so they were always clean and nice smelling. People would take the eggs and wash them and put them back.
Is this so Marie Antoinette could play it at being a peasant, but she
Correct.
wanted everything clean and fresh and rosy?
Not real peasant. You want Disneyland peasant.
Oh, okay.
This is
So
however, all the eggs and the milk for the Petit Trianon were supplied by this working farm. It was a working farm.
yeah,
The luckiest peasants in France
right.
must have lived there. It's very nice.
So you went to Versailles, and when most people would go for the opulent building, the palace, and the gilded halls and everything, did you even go in there?
I did. We did
Yeah.
go in there.
Yeah.
We didn't. We kind of sped through
Yeah.
the tour and took some photos. I just was interested in the Hameau because that is something that came from her heart. She just moved in to Versailles, at the beginning. So, and it's not as if she had it, most of it. It's not the way that it was when she was there. So I love to see the structure and the gates that she had gone through and the steps her feet might have touched. But the Hameau was something she had created and she had initiated. So I really wanted to explore what she thought was was cool.
Did you feel like you were doing a bit of a sort of pilgrimage? Mm-hmm. Do you think that others were as well? Marie Antoinette was your very first episode. Do you feel there's a lot of people have this same kind of intrigue and fascination for her as you do?
I do think so. Not that there were so many people there, because honestly, I have so many photos of Versailles where nobody's in my picture.
That's nice.
I know, that's not very common. So I don't really have so much evidence, but the fact that I get on the train and the guy yells, Marie Antoinette, this way, so he knows why people go.
Yeah, right.
And then the train driver, if you want to see Marie Antoinette, get off here, that kind of thing.
They even said it in English.
Oh, yes.
That's nice.
Knowing that that's who's there. And then the first thing you see when you get out of the train station, McDonald's.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
So so someone who's going to the Hameau, or as the French might say, Hameau, what should they look for? Imagine you've only got 5 minutes there for some reason. Your plane's about to leave. What should you make a beeline for?
Well, you can do the little circle very fast of the main houses. There's the mill house, which of course never ground a bit of grain.
No.
The wheel is just for nice.
There was probably grain there to make it smell nice, though. Just sitting there.
So there's that, and then there are men and women that work there that actually plant the garden. There's seasonal appropriate gardens right now. Brussels sprouts at the Hameau.
So they're growing like a vegetable garden.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't get it though. Is this to stay in theme with what Marie Antoinette started.
Yes.
So they're still doing it basically.
They're still doing it.
But why did she do it because she wanted to play a peasant like you said, or was that her thought, or was it more like, oh, I like animals and farms and stuff?
It might have been a little bit of both. She's not the only noble lady that created such a village. And in her case, I think it was more of a super retreat from the formality of her daily life. She found it quite stifling. And so she retreated to the Petit Trianon, and then there was another series of changes where her dresses became simpler. She would read Rousseau and,
Right.
talk about philosophy and things. And so she wanted a further retreat into the simple life. But her perception of what the simple life was perhaps not reality.
Oh, right. Wow. How old was she when she came to France?
14.
So that means she started this when she was very young.
She did not start the Hameau until a little bit later, but she came to Versailles when she was very young. I can't imagine.
Wow. And did you enjoy Versailles on the whole?
I did.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Not bad, huh?
Oh, yeah.
I've got a little tip for everybody, including you. There's the National Archives in the center of Paris, 3rd, 4th arrondissement somewhere. You can go in and see a lot of it for free, or at least a large chunk of it. I went in there when it was raining the other day. I was giving someone a little tour of Paris, and I was always like, I wonder what's inside the National Archives. I've never been in before, and I knew that it featured in the newest Mission Impossible movie. And so I just popped in there, and they just go, yeah, you go have a look. You have to pay for one bit, but you go have a look. And there's this room towards the back that's so beautiful, decadent, amazing, and it reminded me a little bit of the Palace of Versailles. So if you can't be bothered going to Versailles, just pop out there. Central Paris. It's something that might be interesting for you.
And I can really see in the storytelling aspect how if you were a peasant looking at that opulence, I could see why you would be infuriated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You'd revolt.
You would revolt.
I'd revolt. Do you feel like that when you went out there now? Did you feel like revolting?
I just felt... I thought to myself, you had no better way to spend your money.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the art. I love how the legacy it has left us. But I still find myself thinking you couldn't spare one of these rooms to help the starving.
I think about the churches like that sometimes, like the really big churches in the center of cities. And you think, wow, a lot of time and effort and money went into this. But hey, look, there's a lot of churches in Paris too. But I've got church on the list here because you went and saw something different in Notre Dame.
I did. I went specifically to see the Joan of Arc statue.
Now tell me more about this, because I didn't even know there was one.
There is. Oh, my goodness. It is a very large statue along the right-hand side as you come in. You can't normally get a very good photo of it. There's a lot of people. A lot of people want to see it. It is, she's got a little chapel along the right-hand side, and I lit a candle for my own mother there. So that was my mission at Notre Dame.
That's lovely. And did you? So you brought a candle for Joan of Arc and a potato for Parmentier.
Yes.
What did you bring to the Hameau for Marie Antoinette?
Oh, I didn't. I meant to bring something and I didn't.
What would you bring? Brussels sprout.
There were Brussels sprouts already there.
You could bring a potato.
I could bring a potato.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
By the way, what did you think of the Marie Antoinette film by Sofia Coppola?
I know this is very controversial. I know it is, but I loved it.
You loved it.
I did love it. I know. I absolutely know. And I heard all about it after we talked about that on the show.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved the use of 80s music. I'm an 80s child.
Right.
And I liked the way they used it to evoke the feelings that a young teenager would have had at that time. That's how I approach history.
Yeah.
If you view it through a modern lens, you can understand, because if they played the music of her time, we wouldn't comprehend what that meant to her and her heart.
Yeah.
But, you play Adamant, you can kind of understand, oh, it's the rebellious, she's trying to break free.
Did you like Romeo and Juliet by Baz Luhrmann?
I did.
Because that's a similar kind of thing. Because I saw a performance of Shakespeare, of Romeo and Juliet the other day that was, it was in French, but it had English text. It was Lost in Translation, the company that puts English text on French movies. And it was exact English Shakespeare at the bottom. And I was thinking, I don't know if Shakespeare would want people to be watching his things today and not really understanding everything. And then you think when Baz Luhrmann sort of modernized it, I think Shakespeare would be in his grave going, yeah, thanks, Baz.
I think so, too. I think people in his contemporary audience would have gotten the jokes and the references. And so stripped of all that, it's a little cold. That's what I tried to do on the show. I tried to bring in things like Harry Potter references, or Susan, my partner in the show, does Real Housewives of, believe it or not, here and there. I don't watch that show, so I don't always get her references, but people do. So we try to make it relatable in that same way that Baz Luhrmann made Shakespeare.
It's nice to slip in a Harry Potter or a Real Housewives reference, especially if no one gets it except the people who get it. Do you know what I mean?
That's true.
Anyway, Accio list. I've got 3 or 4 more things here that we've got to get through because we've already been talking for quite a while. So we might whiz through these ones. Here's a quick one. You saw a saxophonist's gravestone in Montmartre.
I did. My father is both a jazz and symphonic musician, and Adolphe Sax, the creator of the saxophone, is interred in Montmartre. So we went by especially to take a photograph for my father and see him, pay a little homage. I didn't bring him anything but my wish to give my father a gift.
Right, that's lovely. Do you think your dad's listening now?
I think so.
Hello.
Yeah.
So the gravestone in the Montmartre Cemetery, which is a beautiful. So I went there for the first time yesterday. Did you see the cats?
I did see the cats.
Cats everywhere.
We took cat food from America to feed those cats. Yes.
I love. You know what you've done that's really cool is a lot of the places you went, you bring in things.
Yes.
Cat food, potatoes. I touched on this just now. I love the idea of. It's like. Have you heard of You can go and see. What's the famous musical Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Oh, yes.
You can go and watch it in the cinema and people bring, I don't know, like an umbrella. And then there's a scene where it's raining and they put it up an umbrella.
Yes,
or there's
props.
Props, right? So they do that for Sound of Music and Rocky Horror. You kind of, without knowing it maybe, you're doing the Paris prop tour.
That's true.
I love it. We've got to put our heads together after this and come up with the Paris prop tour. You bring a potato, you bring cat food. It might be hard to get through customs.
I have to tell you, it's funny because the Galerie Lafayette people, when they saw my friend's bag of cat food, were just like, oh, okay, go ahead.
What were we doing with it in Galerie Lafayette, though?
We had to make a stop there before we went.
Okay. Wow, what an interesting trip you've got. But that's a beautiful cemetery. In fact, I do these walk shows where I walk around with a live Facebook video. I'm going to do my next one in the Montmartre Cemetery because it's so interesting. Under the bridge and everything. Oh,
it's such a contrast to see a working highway. People are walking along, laughing, talking to their friend. And if you're in Montmartre, you can look up and right below it, under the highway overpass, are all of these family vaults. And the contrast between life goes on and here we lay is more startling in Montmartre than anywhere.
Yeah, good point. It's really interesting. And so Cats, Dalida, the famous singer. Anyway, you guys sign up on Patreon to watch that. So we've done everything except Mary Cassatt.
Oh, yes. The painter, Mary Cassatt, had a house here very close to your studio. I took a photo of the house. She was a very, very early famous painter.
Impressionist, I think.
She's most famous for her pictures of mothers and children. That's how everybody would know her. She is an American who defied her parents and came to Paris to pursue her art.
Right. And so you went and found her. So as a history buff.
I went and found her house and took a photo. I knew enough that she had lived on the 6th floor.
Right.
But not enough to know if that meant 6th or 7th.
That's interesting because Americans and French people do it differently.
Correct.
So in France, first floor is not the bottom floor. That would be the rez-de-chaussée, it's called, and then it's first floor. So you maybe were looking at the wrong window, unless you looked at both to be safe.
I took both of them just in case.
Yes. That's cool. And so that, once again, it'll be in the show notes and on the site. But that was Avenue Trudaine, number 13, I think.
Number 13?
Yeah, in the 9th arrondissement. But it reminded me of the story of one of my favorite painters, John Russell. Have you heard of John Russell?
I haven't.
The Australian painter who influenced a lot of the Impressionists in Paris. And I think I'll do an episode about that because it's an Australian painter that no one knows about.
See, this is called falling down a rabbit hole.
I fell down a rabbit hole. But thanks to my mum for pointing out John Russell to me because I didn't know it. But for anyone who hasn't heard of him, he was hanging out with Van Gogh and Claude Monet and Rodin and Matisse. And no one knows his name. Come on. Okay, and then there was one more point on your list that I quite liked here. I asked you, is there anything that you haven't done yet that you'd like to do? And you said you'd like to find the remnants of the guillotine.
I would. Evidently, the stones that supported them are still there.
Creepy.
In a road.
Yeah.
And people walk and drive by such an amazingly, I don't know what to say, creepy, terrifying piece of history all day and don't even realize it.
So you'll kick yourself. It's quite close to the start of the Pere Lachaise cemetery. Not too far, but I did a video once. I did it live. When Facebook started doing live videos, I was like, this is fun. And I went there and I told a story. I'll put it in there. I'll attach it as well. But it's about how when I walked past it one night, not knowing it was there, I heard weird noises. And I went back and investigated. And if you find the 4 bits, it's very I think there's a stone, something on the wall explaining what it is. But like you said, people drive over it, walk past it, and they never know what they're looking at. The 4 feet of the guillotine, where I think hundreds, maybe thousands of people met their end. Anyway, I also wanted to. I think we got through your list. We did Parmentier, Versailles, Princess Diana, guillotine, Adolphe Sax, Mary Cassatt, Statue of Liberty, and Joan of Arc. 8 things that a history nerd might like to find in Paris. I mean, you don't have to. There's lots of other things to find. But that's what you did, Beckett.
That's what I did so far.
But I also wanted to talk a little bit about your podcast because not only is it one of the top podcasts in the entire universe, true,
I suppose,
but also you've and the reason we got talking is you've had a lot of French guests or people in the spotlight, either French people or people who've spent a large portion of your time. Maybe you can whip through the list.
All right. So as to French women that we have covered throughout the years, Eleanor of Aquitaine is the furthest back we've gone. Then we've got Joan of Arc, Madame de Pompadour, Marie Antoinette, of course, Sophie Blanchard, who was a balloonist during the times of Louis XVIII and Napoleon, both, Marie Curie, Coco Chanel, Statue of Liberty, again, we've talked about her. But in addition to the actual French women, we have people of assorted nationalities who've spent very key parts of their life here. Anne Boleyn grew up in court. Mary Queen of Scots also grew up in court. Abigail Adams, First Lady of the United States, came to Paris while her husband was working here. Zelda Fitzgerald famously operated here. Josephine Baker, who is my favorite subject we've ever covered on the podcast, left a very prejudiced America to make quite a name for herself here in France. And also First Lady Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis had a great love for France.
So what is it that you think? I mean, in terms of, you've done hundreds of episodes, right? But that's a strong showing from France there.
It is.
Maybe more than most of the other countries, I'd wager. So what is it about France, that France and women, that has such a strong connection and leaves such a strong impression?
Well, it was the seat of cultural life for so long. The language of diplomacy was French. So anyone that rises to prominence probably had some kind of connection to the country. I just think there's a I don't know, like a romance and a freedom here that there hadn't been in other places. And maybe they're drawn to that power.
And how does it feel to be a woman walking around in these women's footsteps?
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
There is a little frisson. Oh, there's a French word for you.
Oh, nice.
I don't know what the feeling is. I can't even. It's a cross between nostalgia and fear, sort of. I don't know if there's an actual word for it.
Why the fear?
I don't know. Just the whole idea that time, like Laura Ingalls Wilder said so long ago, surely me walking around right now will never be a long time ago. But here in Paris, it really does seem like, oh, yes, in fact.
Yeah.
Your current today is someday going to be someone's 50 years ago. My mother walked here, you know.
So what's the moral of that?
I live in the present, I suppose, because that's all you really, really have.
Yeah. And that, and I think we can finish on that note, because that's quite powerful words. Makes me feel like walking down the street with a straight back, good posture, and big strides, knowing that you're leaving your legacy in every footstep. But what can we look forward to in the History Chicks podcast?
Well, we normally don't tell the subjects, but some upcoming French subjects that we no promises as to when that we may cover. Obviously, Mary Cassatt, George Sand, Colette might come sooner than later due to the movie.
I'm excited about that movie.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm so excited.
Keira Knightley is a strong woman. She's I've read some interviews with her about she was tackling Disney, I think, saying she doesn't let her kids watch some of the Disney movies, saying like, you don't need to be kissed by a handsome prince to get there in life. And she's picking on these big roles like Colette. Pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
She does my favorite Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
I know
yeah?
that's controversial too.
I love that you got a favorite Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There's a history nerd.
Yeah. Anyway, history nerd. From one history nerd, you, to a becoming history nerd, me. Thank you for coming in the studio and sharing your tips on the Eiffel Tower.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a great conversation. I'm looking forward to finding some of these things that you've pointed out, and especially Parmentier. I'm very curious about that. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your time in Paris, and I'll see you in October when you're back again.
Thank you.
But thanks for coming in. Well, there you have it. That was Beckett Graham from the History Chicks podcast. We talked a little bit at the end about potentially doing a walk show together for Patreon subscribers. So if that is you, head on over to the Patreon page after you listen to this, because the plan is for us to walk through the Montmartre Cemetery, looking for a few of the things we mentioned in the episode and a lot more, especially those cats. But now, a little bit of reader mail. I had one letter this week that said, Oliver, you're doing a lot of stuff about what to do in Paris when you're on a budget. But what about if you're not on a budget? Can't you talk to someone about that? And that is a really good idea. It's true. I guess because I'm on a budget, I'm watching my own spending, but that doesn't mean all you guys are. So I will keep that in mind. I'm thinking of the perfect guest. If you have the perfect guest, get in touch. Thank you, Ruth, for that email. I also got a fun email that I tried to find, but I just couldn't. I don't know where you sent it, but someone who told me that they listened to the show on their commute to their job as a librarian in a prison, which I thought was really interesting. I've been trying to track down that email, but it reminded me to give you guys a tip. If you want to contact me, do it via email. There's too many ways to contact. It all gets lost. Instagram messaging, Facebook messaging, forget it. Send me an email, oliver@theeiffeltower.com. Now, talking about communication and how you guys can contact me, when you're in France, there's only one way to communicate with French people. That's in French. And yes, that is my segue into the word from the show's sponsor. I'm working with French Today for the month. You can get a 10% discount, an extra 10% on everything that's on their audiobooks, on their website, if you just enter the code EARFUL1. So frenchtoday.com/earful1. A few of you guys have already bought it, meaning you're on this journey with me to improve or learn your French. They've got stuff for people right at the beginning, and they've got stuff for very advanced people. Me, I'm not a beginner, but I've started at the beginning, and I thought I'd share 3 or 4 things I've written down from doing the À moi Paris 1, level 1. I've done the whole thing. I've listened to the audio at least, and I've written down things that I thought were kind of fun or things that I just never used in French, and I thought I'd share them with you so you guys can join along on my journey. If you already speak French, you'll probably smile thinking of the things that I found interesting. If you don't speak French, jump on board and learn with me. One thing that I noted that I thought was funny, you know in English we say ring ring, like a telephone goes ring ring. You know what they say in French? They say ring with a D at the front, like dring, dring, dring. I thought that was pretty funny. That's something I learned. Also, I learned a few verbs I'd never heard of. How do you bump into someone? You bouscule them. How do you take someone? Like take someone to school, for example. I wonder if it also works for kidnap someone. But amener, there's one. So how are you going to take Paul to school? Or can you take Paul to school? Est-ce que tu peux amener Paul à l'école? Another thing I noticed, because it's something I always get wrong and I'm scared to use it, is like when you do a course, I did a course, you say j'ai fait un cours. And then if you do the shopping, you say j'ai fait les courses. And that's something I've been getting wrong since the beginning. I remember when I moved here and I told people, I always said, they say, how do you speak French? How did you learn French? And I said, I did a course. Well, that's what I wanted to say. And instead I said, I did the shopping. And that's why they always looked at me weird. Especially, it's kind of embarrassing. You think you're telling them that you did a course, but you're telling them you did the shopping when you're trying to prove how good you are at French. But there you go. J'ai fait un cours, not les courses. And the other one that I've noted that I thought was kind of cool, if you get soaking wet from the rain, do you know the verb for that? To be soaked? Tremper. Didn't know that one either, but I'm planning to use it. All these things, like I said last week, you repeat it. It's audiobooks. Starts at level 1, very basic stuff or kind of early stuff in your French journey, but then you repeat it, you repeat it, you repeat it. And so my goal is to use all those things I've said in conversation this week But the other thing is, Camille, the woman, the voice behind French Today, is going to be on this show this month. So I need to know what to talk. I've got some ideas for an episode. I was thinking, I got an email from someone that I should do an episode about French slang, which I thought was a really good idea. I think I'm going to try and convince Camille to do that with me. Another one I was thinking is metro names in Paris that are really hard to pronounce. Could be a video, something there. But also maybe something for beginners. I assume a lot of you guys listening want to speak good enough French for a trip to Paris, so maybe we'll do something like that. But anyway, that's all coming up on the Eiffel Tower. Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Beckett. If you want to listen to her podcast, it's on the History Chicks. You know how to listen to podcasts. You found this one, so go and give her a listen. And if you want to learn your French, don't forget to use that code EARFUL1, FrenchToday.com/EARFUL1. That will work for January. Don't try and use it in February. If you're listening to this in the future, get with it, guys. Listen to the Eiffel Tower when it comes out. That's how to get all the good stuff. If you're listening to this episode in the past, I don't know how you did that, but I'm very impressed. Good work. You should get in contact with Beckett from History Chicks. She'd like to know how you time traveled, and I would too. Anyway, see you guys next Monday for another podcast episode. Unless, of course, you're a Patreon supporter, and then I'll see you tomorrow for a walk around the Montmartre Cemetery. Au revoir.